The massive arena floated in orbit above the neutral world of Prime. It was the largest structure most species had ever built together. Millions of beings from across the galaxy had gathered to watch the survival games, an event held once every 50 cycles. The games tested strength, endurance, and will. Only the greatest athletes from each species were allowed to compete. Ambassador Al of the consortium stood at the observation deck and watched the arriving ships. His silver skin shifted colors as his mood changed. Right now it showed a pale blue, the color of amusement. His people had won the past 6 games in a row. No other species came close to matching adaptability. They could survive in almost any environment and adjust their bodies to meet any challenge. A small transport ship docked at the far end of the station. Al watched it with mild curiosity. The ship was plain and simple, nothing like the decorated vessels of the OK warriors or the sleek crafts of the markings on its hull identified it as a human vessel. Al let out a soft clicking sound that meant laughter among his people. Humans, the newcomers. They had only been part of galactic society for 12 standard years. Most species still thought of them as primitives who had somehow stumbled into space travel. Their home world was classified as a Category 7 death world, a place so hostile that most species could not survive there without heavy protection. And yet the creatures that evolved there looked so weak and fragile. The human delegation walked through the arrival corridor. There were 6 of them, followed by a small support team. They wore simple gray uniforms with a blue patch on the shoulder. Al studied them carefully. They were small compared to most species. Their skin came in various shades of brown and tan. They had no claws, no armored plates, no visible natural weapons of any kind. They looked like prey animals. The team captain was a male named Daniel. He had dark hair and calm brown eyes. He moved with quiet confidence, looking around the station with interest but not wonder. Behind him walked the others. Lisa Tran was their medical specialist, a small female with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Shaw was tall for a human and lean, built for climbing and long-distance movement. Brooks had spent her career studying ocean life before becoming an athlete. Carlos was broad and strong, a former rescue worker who had pulled people from burning buildings. Cole was their tactical mind, the one who planned and calculated. A group of OK warriors passed the humans in the corridor. The OK were massive creatures, standing nearly 3 meters tall. Their bodies were covered in thick gray hide, and their arms ended in hands that could crush metal. They looked down at the humans and made deep rumbling sounds of dismissal. One of the OK spoke in the common trade language. "These are the death world creatures. They look like hatchlings. Our young are larger than this." The other OK laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Daniel looked up at them without any change in his expression. He simply nodded politely and kept walking. His team followed without a word. Al watched this exchange with interest. Most species would have responded to such an insult. They would have hissed and flared their neck frills. Even the peaceful would have protested. But the humans showed no reaction at all. Perhaps they were too stupid to understand they had been insulted, or perhaps there was something else going on behind those calm eyes. The opening ceremony took place in the central arena, a vast open space that could hold hundreds of thousands of spectators. Holographic displays floated above, showing the event to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Each team marched onto the field as their species was announced. The OK received thunderous applause. They were always favorites because of their raw power and warrior culture. They came next, their scaled bodies gleaming under the lights. They were the fastest species in the known galaxy, capable of short bursts of speed that no other creature could match. They entered to respectful silence. They did not need cheers. Everyone knew they were the team to beat. When the humans were announced, there was mostly confusion. Many spectators had never seen a human before. They leaned forward, trying to get a better look at these strange creatures from the infamous death world. Some laughed at how small they were. Others wondered why they had even bothered to enter. Al made his way to the broadcast platform where reporters from various species gathered to share opinions. A journalist, and creature with multiple eyes, asked him for his thoughts on this cycle's competition. "The games will be exciting as always," Al said smoothly. "We have strong competitors from many species. The OK are powerful, they are fast. My own people remain confident in our abilities." "What about the humans?" they asked. "They are new to the games. Do you see them as a threat?" Al allowed his skin to shift to the pale blue of amusement again. "The humans are an interesting curiosity. Their world is indeed classified as a death world, but look at them. They have no natural armor, no claws, no venom. They are soft and slow. I predict they will be eliminated in the first round." He paused for effect. "In fact, I will make a public wager. If the humans survive past the first challenge, I will personally apologize for underestimating them." The statement spread quickly through the arena. Soon, everyone was talking about the ambassador's wager. The humans had gone from being ignored to being the subject of jokes and betting pools. Most agreed with Al. The humans had no chance. In the human preparation area, Daniel gathered his team. They had all heard about the wager and the laughter. Lisa looked angry. Carlos had his arms crossed, his jaw tight. Even the usually calm seemed bothered. "Let them talk," Daniel said quietly. "Let them laugh. We did not come here to prove anything to them." "Then why are we here?" asked. Daniel looked at each of them in turn. "We are here because 12 years ago we were alone. We thought we were the only intelligent life in the universe. Then we met the galaxy, and the galaxy looked at us like we were nothing, like we were insects, like we did not matter." He paused. "We are not here to win medals. We are here to show them who we are, not through words, through action. When this is over, they will know what a human is. They will know what we are made of." The team was silent for a moment. Then Carlos nodded slowly. "All right, Captain, let us show them." Outside, the first challenge was being announced. It was called the Crucible, a test that would push every competitor to their limits. The aliens prepared with confidence. The humans prepared in silence. The games were about to begin. The Crucible was designed to break competitors. It was a 20-kilometer course that passed through 4 different environmental zones. Each zone was built to test a different kind of survival skill. The frozen tundra came first, with temperatures cold enough to kill most warm-blooded creatures in minutes. Then came the volcanic fields, where the ground itself could burn through protective gear. The jungle section was thick with humidity and heat. Finally, the desert waited at the end, dry and merciless under artificial suns. Teams had 1-day cycle to complete the course. Any team that failed to cross the finish line would be eliminated from the games. The starting signal echoed across the arena. 12 teams began to move. The OK took the lead immediately. Their massive bodies generated enormous amounts of heat, making the frozen tundra feel like a mild afternoon to them. They crashed through snowdrifts and climbed ice walls without slowing down. The crowd cheered as they pulled ahead of everyone else. They stayed close behind. Their scales provided natural insulation, and their quick movements kept their blood flowing. They were not as comfortable as the OK, but they managed well enough. They moved at a steady pace. Their adaptive skin shifted to provide better insulation, and they conserved energy for the challenges ahead. Al watched from the observation deck with satisfaction. His team was exactly where they needed to be. The humans fell behind almost immediately. They moved slowly through the tundra, huddled together in a tight group. Their breath came out in white clouds. Their exposed skin turned red from the cold. The alien commentators began making jokes about how long they would last. "The humans appear to be struggling," one commentator observed. "This is not surprising. Despite coming from a harsh world, they seem poorly equipped for extreme cold." Another commentator agreed. "They have no fur, no blubber, no natural protection. I expect they will turn back before reaching the volcanic section." But the humans did not turn back. They kept moving forward step by step. They talked to each other constantly, checking on each other, adjusting their pace to stay together. When started to slow down, Carlos moved closer to share body heat. When Lisa stumbled, caught her arm and kept her upright. The volcanic section changed everything. The OK, who had dominated the tundra, now faced a serious problem. Their bodies that generated so much heat could not release it fast enough. The massive warriors began to overheat. Their movements became sluggish. Their gray skin turned an unhealthy dark color. They took the lead now. Their heat-resistant scales protected them from the worst of the volcanic heat. They darted across fields of cooling lava and leaped over streams of molten rock with ease. The crowd roared their approval. They adapted smoothly, their skin shifting to reflect heat rather than absorb it. They maintained their steady pace. The humans were still behind, but they were still moving. They wrapped wet cloths around their heads and necks. They poured water on each other to stay cool. They looked miserable, covered in sweat and ash, but they did not stop. Then disaster struck for the OK. One of their competitors, a warrior named An, collapsed near the edge of a lava field. His body had simply overheated beyond its ability to cope. He lay on the hot ground, barely conscious, his massive chest heaving as he struggled to breathe. The OK team captain, or rushed to his side. He tried to lift his fallen teammate, but it was too heavy and too hot to move safely. The rules of the games were clear. Teams could not receive help from other teams. Competitors could only be assisted by their own people. If the OK could not move in themselves, they would have to leave him behind or forfeit the challenge. Or roared in frustration. He would not abandon a warrior, but he could not save him either. The other teams passed by without stopping. They did not even look. They observed briefly and then continued on their way. This was competition. Helping a rival team was not just against the rules. It was foolish. Lisa Tran stopped. Daniel saw her hesitate and knew immediately what she was thinking. Lisa, the rules say we cannot help them. The rules say teams cannot help teams, Lisa replied. But I am a medic. There is a being in danger. I am going to help him. She broke away from the group and ran toward the fallen OK, or saw her coming and growled a warning. His massive hand closed into a fist. Stay back, small one. This does not concern you. Lisa ignored him. She knelt beside him and began checking his vital signs. Her medical scanner hummed as it analyzed his alien physiology. He is overheating. His core temperature is critical. We need to cool him down now. Or stared at her. Why would you help us? We are your rivals, we mocked you. Lisa looked up at him with hard eyes. Because he is dying, that is all that matters. She pulled out her water supply and began pouring it over his body. The water sizzled and steamed as it touched his overheated skin. She showed the other OK how to fan him, how to find the pulse points where cooling would be most effective. The rest of the human team had stopped to wait. Daniel watched the other teams pulling further and further ahead. Every second they waited, their chances of finishing in a good position decreased. Captain Carlos said quietly, "We are falling behind." "I know. Should we leave Lisa and continue?" Daniel shook his head. "We finish together or not at all. That is who we are." It took 20 minutes before and was stable enough to move. Lisa helped the OK team get him upright and showed them how to keep him cool as they walked. She did not ask for thanks. She simply rejoined her own team and they started moving again. The humans crossed the jungle section and the desert in a blur of exhaustion. They pushed themselves harder than they had ever pushed before, trying to make up for lost time. Their legs burned. Their lungs ached, but they kept going. When they finally crossed the finish line, they were in 8th place out of 12 teams. The commentators called it a respectable finish for newcomers. Ambassador Al noted that they had survived the first round, but barely. No one mentioned what Lisa had done for the OK. But in the OK preparation area, or sat in silence and thought about the small human who had stopped to help his warrior. He had called them weak. He had called them hatchlings. He was beginning to wonder if he had been wrong. The second challenge was announced the following day. It was simply called the endurance test. The rules were straightforward. Competitors would move continuously on a course of moderate difficulty. They could walk, jog, or run. They could slow down or speed up, but they could never stop. The moment a competitor stopped moving, they were eliminated. The last team with at least one member still moving would win. Most species considered this challenge a test of raw biological capability. Some bodies were simply built to last longer than others, though with their physiology were considered favorites. Their hive mind allowed them to share energy across their collective consciousness. The OK, despite their size, had incredible stamina for short periods. They could adapt their bodies to conserve energy in remarkable ways. No one expected much from the humans. They had barely survived the first challenge. Their bodies were clearly inferior to the more evolved species. The betting pools gave them the worst odds of any remaining team. The challenge began at dawn. They burst forward at incredible speed, covering more ground in the first hour than most teams would manage in 3. The crowd cheered their explosive performance. This was what they were known for. This was their strength. But speed was not the same as endurance. By the 4th hour, they were slowing down. Their bodies were designed for quick bursts of energy, not sustained effort. Their scales, which had protected them from heat, now trapped warmth inside their bodies. One by one, they began to falter. By the 6th hour, the last competitor collapsed and was carried off the course. The crowd was shocked. Though one of the premier athletic species in the galaxy had been the first to fall. The OK fared better. Their massive bodies contained enormous reserves of energy. They stomped around the course with steady determination, their heavy feet shaking the ground with each step. But even they had limits. The same size that gave them strength also required more fuel. By the 10th hour, the OK were struggling. By the 14th hour, only or remained on his feet and he was barely moving. They adapted constantly, shifting their metabolism to burn energy more efficiently. They moved with mechanical precision, conserving every bit of strength. They were designed for exactly this kind of challenge. And through it all, the humans kept moving. At the 15-hour mark, the alien commentators began to pay attention to something strange. The humans were not slowing down. They were not speeding up either. They simply maintained the same steady pace they had started with, hour after hour after hour. This is unexpected, one commentator noted. The humans appear to be maintaining their pace despite the extended duration. Most species would show significant degradation by now. An expert on alien biology was brought in to explain. It is their evolutionary heritage. Humans evolved on a world where they could not outrun their prey. They had no claws to catch it, no venom to kill it. So they developed a different strategy. They would follow their prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal simply collapsed from exhaustion. Humans call it persistence hunting. The stadium fell quiet as this information spread. The spectators looked at the humans with new eyes. Shaw jogged steadily around the course. He was sweating heavily and his legs ached with every step, but he had felt this before. He had climbed mountains that took days to summit. He had crossed glaciers that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. This was just another long walk. Lisa Tran ran beside Carlos, and they talked about nothing important. They discussed favorite foods and childhood memories and dreams for the future. The talking helped pass the time. It kept their minds focused on something other than the burning in their muscles. Observer approached the human section of the course and watched them pass. He was fascinated. Why do you talk while you run? Does it not waste energy? Daniel glanced at him without breaking stride. It helps. When your body wants to quit, you need to distract your mind. The body can do more than the mind believes. We just need to convince ourselves. They did not understand, but he remembered the words. At the 18-hour mark, they began to fail. Their hive mind, which allowed them to share energy, also meant they shared exhaustion. When one member grew tired, they all felt it. The collective burden became too great. They collapsed together, all 6 members falling at nearly the same moment. The crowd gasped. They had been expected to win this challenge. Their elimination left only 3 teams in competition, the OK with only or remaining, and the humans with all 6 members still moving. At the 20-hour mark, or finally fell. The mighty warrior tried to rise 3 times before accepting defeat. He lay on his back, staring up at the artificial sky, and listened to the humans jogging past him. Their footsteps were light compared to his, but they never stopped, never paused, never slowed. He began to understand something about these creatures. At the 22-hour mark, the last competitor stumbled and could not recover. She had pushed her adaptive biology to its absolute limit. There was simply nothing left to adapt. She fell to her knees and then to her face, unconscious before she hit the ground. The humans kept moving. The judges were confused. According to the rules, the challenge ended when only one team remained. But the humans showed no signs of stopping. They continued their steady pace as if nothing had changed. At the 24-hour mark, Daniel asked a simple question: "Are we done?" The chief judge responded through the speaker system: "You have won, you may stop." Daniel nodded and kept jogging. "Not yet, let us see how far we can go." The crowd watched in stunned silence as the humans continued for another 2 hours. They finally stopped at the 26-hour mark, not because they could not continue, but because Daniel decided it was time. They gathered together in the center of the course, breathing hard, legs shaking, but still standing. The arena was completely quiet for several seconds. Then Or began to stomp his feet against the ground. Among the OK, this was the highest form of respect. Other OK joined him. The sound grew louder and louder until it echoed through the entire station. They began to click their approval. They hummed in harmony. Even some bowed their heads in acknowledgement. Ambassador Al watched from the observation deck. His skin had shifted to a deep purple, the color of confusion and reconsideration. He had wagered that the humans would not survive the first round. They had just won the second in a way no species had ever won before. These creatures from the Death World were not what they appeared to be. They were something else entirely. Something that the galaxy had never seen before. The third challenge was designed to test more than physical ability. It was called the Rescue, a complex simulation that required teams to locate and extract survivors from a dangerous environment. The scenario involved a collapsed structure filled with hazards. Teams would be scored on speed, efficiency, and the number of survivors they recovered. The survivors were automated drones designed to mimic distressed beings. The simulation was built inside a massive dome on the surface of Prime. It looked like a ruined city with broken buildings and blocked streets. Smoke machines created artificial haze. Speakers played sounds of alarms and distress calls. It was meant to feel real, but everyone knew it was perfectly safe. The hazards were controlled. The dangers were measured. Nothing could actually go wrong. The human team entered the simulation area and immediately began their assessment. Cole studied the layout and identified likely survivor locations. Daniel assigned roles. Carlos and Shaw would handle structural obstacles. Lisa Tran would provide medical support. Brooks would scout ahead. They had trained for scenarios like this. They knew what to do. The first 10 minutes went smoothly. Teams spread throughout the simulation, each following their own strategies. They used their adaptive senses to locate survivors quickly. The OK simply smashed through obstacles to reach their targets. They relied on speed to cover more ground. Then the ground shook. At first, people thought it was part of the simulation. The scenario involved a collapsed structure after all. Some rumbling was expected. But then a real section of ceiling came crashing down. Real flames erupted from a ruptured fuel line that was never supposed to rupture. Real smoke began filling the air, not the harmless theatrical fog, but actual toxic fumes. The safety systems had failed. Alarms screamed throughout the dome. Emergency lights flashed. An automated voice announced evacuation procedures. Most teams immediately began moving toward the exits. This was no longer a game. This was survival. Ambassador Al watched the chaos unfold on his display screens. He shouted for emergency response teams to be deployed. Safety personnel rushed toward the dome, but they were minutes away. Too many things were going wrong too quickly. Inside the dome, the team was already gone. They had used their speed to reach the exits before most species even understood what was happening. They followed close behind, their survival instincts overriding any competitive thoughts. Other teams scattered in different directions, each trying to find a way out. The OK team hesitated, or saw that several competitors who had been slower than their teammates were trapped under fallen debris. He moved toward them, but another section of ceiling came down, cutting him off. He roared in frustration and was forced toward the exit by his remaining team members. The human team did not move toward the exits. Daniel looked at his team. There are people trapped in there. The emergency teams are coming, said. They have better equipment. They are minutes away. Some of those people do not have minutes. Carlos was already moving. What is the plan, Captain? Daniel pointed toward the heart of the destruction. We go in. We find whoever needs help. We bring them out. The team moved as one unit, heading deeper into the collapsing structure while everyone else fled. Lisa pulled her medical kit against her body, grabbed a piece of fallen metal to use as a prying tool, wrapped cloth around her face to filter the worst of the smoke. The first survivors they found were. Two of them were pinned under a fallen beam, their scales scratched and bleeding. They hissed in fear when they saw the humans approaching. Easy, Carlos said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. We are here to help. He and positioned themselves on either side of the beam. It was heavy, far heavier than anything humans should have been able to lift, but they planted their feet, took deep breaths, and pushed. Their muscles strained. Their faces turned red. Veins stood out on their necks. The beam moved, pulled the free while Carlos and held the weight. Lisa checked their injuries quickly and cleared them to move. Get to the east exit. It looked clear when we came in. They stared at them with wide eyes. You came back for us. Go, Daniel said firmly. We have others to find. They found next. A group of young ones had been watching from what should have been a safe observation area. The explosion had trapped them in a pocket of breathable air that was slowly filling with smoke. They clicked and hummed in terror, unable to find a way out. Found a path through the debris while kept the young calm. She talked to them in a soft voice, telling them stories about Earth, about the ocean and the mountains and the strange creatures that lived there. She told them about dolphins that played in the waves and birds that flew across entire continents. The young stopped panicking and listened to her voice. Carlos tore through the last barrier with his bare hands. The metal cut his palms, but he did not stop. He led the young ones out while continued her stories. The rescue teams finally arrived, but they found that much of their work had already been done. Humans were everywhere in the wreckage. Lisa was treating a wounded okay despite having broken ribs of her own, had second-degree burns across both arms from pulling out of a fire. Carlos was unconscious from smoke inhalation, but had somehow managed to carry two to safety before collapsing. Daniel stood at the entrance of the dome, directing the emergency workers to areas where survivors might still be trapped. He could barely stand. His lungs burned with every breath. His eyes were red and swollen from the smoke. But he kept working, kept pointing, kept helping. Ambassador Al approached him. The skin was shifting through colors so fast it was hard to track, showing emotions he could not control. "Why?" the ambassador asked. "They are not your people. They are not even your species. You risked your lives for beings who laughed at you, who dismissed you, who considered you inferior. Why would you do this?" Daniel looked at him with exhausted eyes. Blood was dripping from a cut on his forehead. His hands were blistered and raw. "Because they needed help," he said simply. "What other reason does anyone need?" Al had no answer. The rescue continued for 3 more hours. When it was finally over, the count showed that the human team had personally saved 17 beings from 6 different species. They had worked in conditions that should have killed them. They had lifted weights that exceeded their biological limits. They had breathed toxic air until their lungs nearly failed. And when asked why they had done it, they all gave the same answer. Because someone needed help. That was enough. The games were suspended. There would be no official winner this cycle. The tragedy at the dome had made competition seem unimportant. Investigators were examining what had gone wrong with the safety systems. Officials were preparing statements and apologies. But across the galaxy, no one was talking about the accident itself. They were talking about the humans. Footage of the rescue spread through every network and communication system in known space. Billions of beings watched the small creatures from the death world run into danger while everyone else ran away. They watched humans lift impossible weights and breathe poison air and keep working long after their bodies should have failed. They watched and they wondered. The analysis programs ran constantly. Scientists studied human physiology with new interest, trying to understand what they had witnessed. They found remarkable things. Humans could function through pain in ways that other species could not. Most creatures had biological safeguards that forced them to stop when damaged. Humans could override these safeguards through sheer willpower. They called it adrenaline. They called it determination. They called it being stubborn. Humans could also continue operating at high levels even when exhausted. Their bodies had multiple energy systems that kicked in when the primary ones failed. They could push themselves to complete collapse and then find a little more. Scientists called it extraordinary. Humans just shrugged and said it was normal. But the most discussed finding was not physical at all. It was behavioral. Humans had risked their lives to save members of other species. This was not unusual in itself. Many species would help others if the cost was low. What shocked the galaxy was that the humans had done it without hesitation, without calculation, without any apparent thought for their own safety. They had seen beings in danger and they had simply acted. On the OK home world, the footage of Lisa Tran helping their fallen warrior during the first challenge was played over and over. Warriors who had dismissed humans as weak now watched a small female face down or himself to save a life. They did not understand her motivation, but they respected her courage. On the world, the survivors of the dome collapse spoke about the human female who had told them stories, while rescue workers cleared a path to safety. They had been terrified, certain they were going to die, and this strange creature had talked to them about dolphins and mountains until the fear went away. Even on the home world, where pride ran deep and admitting error was considered shameful, the footage was discussed in quiet tones. These primitives from the death world had shown something that the advanced had not, the willingness to sacrifice for strangers. In the medical bay of station, the human team slowly recovered. Lisa had 3 broken ribs and a punctured lung. Arms were wrapped in healing gel to repair his burns. Carlos had woken up after 12 hours and immediately asked if everyone had gotten out safely, had minor injuries but refused to leave Lisa's side. was bruised everywhere but otherwise intact. Daniel sat in a chair beside his team, watching them sleep. He had the fewest injuries of any of them, but he was the most tired. Leadership weighed heavy in moments like these. A knock came at the door. Daniel looked up to see Or standing in the entrance. The massive OK warrior had to duck to fit through the frame. He carried something wrapped in cloth. "Captain," Or said. His voice was softer than Daniel had ever heard it. "I wish to speak with you." Daniel nodded. "Come in." Or approached and unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a blade, curved and beautiful, with patterns etched along its edge. "This belonged to my father. He carried it in 37 battles. Among my people, to give such a blade is the highest honor one warrior can show another." He held it out to Daniel. "I was wrong about your kind. You are not weak. You are not soft. You are something my people do not have a word for. You are strong in a way that has nothing to do with muscle or bone. I offer this blade as a symbol of my respect." Daniel took the blade carefully. "I am honored, Or, truly. Your medic saved my warrior's life. Your team saved 17 beings when they could have saved themselves. The OK do not forget such debts." After left, Ambassador Al arrived. His skin was a steady deep blue, the color of humility among his people. He stood at the entrance for a long moment before speaking. "I made a wager," he said quietly. "I said your people would not survive the first round. I was arrogant. I was foolish. I looked at your bodies and saw weakness. I did not look deeper." He paused. "I have withdrawn my wager. I have also submitted a proposal to the Galactic Council. I have recommended that humanity be granted permanent observer status on the Galactic Safety Council. You have shown that your species has something valuable to offer, something that perhaps we have forgotten." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" "The courage to help others regardless of cost, the willingness to suffer for strangers. We have technology, we have knowledge, we have power. But somewhere along the way, many of us lost the simple understanding that every life has value and that sometimes you must risk your own life to protect others." The proposal passed unanimously 3 days later. At the closing ceremony, which was held despite the suspension of the games, the 6 human competitors stood together on the central platform. They were bandaged and bruised and tired, but they stood. The arena was filled with beings from every species in the known galaxy. They had come not to celebrate a competition, but to witness something they had never seen before. They had come to see the... Daniel stepped forward to speak. He looked out at the countless faces watching him and took a deep breath. "We did not come here to win," he said. "We came here to show you who we are. We are humans. We come from a harsh world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We survived not because we were the strongest or the fastest or the most adaptable. We survived because we learned to help each other." He looked at his team, at Lisa with her broken ribs, with his burned arms, at Carlos who had nearly died pulling strangers from danger. "This is what we are. We are not special. We are not superior. But we believe that strength means nothing if you do not use it to protect others. We believe that every life matters, regardless of species or origin, and when someone needs help, we will be there." The arena was silent for a long moment. Then the OK began to stomp their feet. The clicked their approval. The hummed in perfect harmony. The ancient and proud bowed their heads. The sound grew and grew until it shook the station itself. Every species joining together to honor 6 small creatures from an insignificant death world. The humans had entered the games as unknowns. They left as something else entirely. They left as proof that the greatest strength in the universe is not found in speed or size or technology. It is found in the heart that refuses to quit, and the hands that reach out to help.